welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into something absolutely fascinating, the hidden and not-so-hidden levers of international power. We're going to pull back the curtain on how global security is actually managed. We'll be looking at the very public halls of international diplomacy and contrasting them with the highly classified, encrypted networks of global intelligence. Specifically, we're focusing on two massive, yet incredibly different entities, the P5 and the Five Eyes. So, who really pulls the strings of global security? When a major crisis breaks out, who actually decides the global response? Now, you might be picturing world leaders debating on television, right? But the reality is, global power is deeply divided. It's split between highly visible public chambers, where treaties are debated for the whole world to see, and highly classified, exclusive networks where raw intelligence flows in total secrecy. To really understand geopolitics today, we've got to understand both of these worlds. Here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with the two blocks of global power, examine the P5 and the Five Eyes, dive into the unique US and UK overlap, and wrap up with the modern rise of minilateralism. Section 1. Two blocks of global power, public versus secret. Okay, to understand how the modern world is run, we actually have to travel back to the immediate aftermath of World War II. The victorious Allies were trying to build a brand new world order to prevent another global catastrophe. And out of that era, two vastly different approaches to global security were born almost exactly at the same time. On one side, you've got a massive public treaty, the United Nations Charter, signed in 1945. It's highly visible, legally binding, and completely foundational to international law. But on the exact opposite side, you have the UK-USA Agreement of 1946. Fun fact about this intelligence pact, it was so deeply classified that for decades, even some prime ministers weren't fully briefed on it. Crazy, right? So one system relies on global public consensus, while the other relies on deep secrecy and absolute trust among a tiny group of allies. Moving on to Section 2, the P5 and multilateral governance. This is the highly public face of global security, operating right out of the United Nations headquarters in New York. Just consider the sheer weight of authority these five nations hold. The P5 stands for the permanent five members of the UN Security Council: China, France, Russia, the United Kingdom, and the United States. These are the sovereign states granted permanent seats by that 1945 UN Charter. Their primary job? Maintaining international peace. And under Chapter 7 of the Charter, they possess incredible legally binding powers. We're talking about the ability to authorize military force, establish global peacekeeping missions, and impose devastating international sanctions. It is literally the ultimate executive branch of the world. But here's where the mechanics of that public power get a bit complicated. The crucial thing to understand is the absolute power of the veto, which is outlined in Article 27 of the UN Charter. Any single one of those permanent members can completely block any non-procedural decision. It absolutely does not matter if the rest of the world supports a resolution. If one P5 nation says no, it dies on the floor. And as you can probably imagine, with intense rivalries between nations like the US, Russia, and China, this frequently leads to massive gridlock. The very mechanism designed to keep the peace often just paralyzes the whole chamber. Section 3. Five Eyes and Minilateral Intelligence. We're now shifting our focus from the public, often paralyzed stage of the UN into the shadows of the world's most significant and, for decades, most secret intelligence alliance. The Five Eyes, often abbreviated as FVE, is made up of five specific English-speaking intelligence agencies. You've got the NSA in the US, GCHQ in the UK, Canada's CSC, Australia's ASD, and New Zealand's GCSB. Now, unlike NATO, this is not a military alliance with a public treaty and collective defense obligations. It doesn't even have a single public command structure. Instead, it's an incredibly high-trust network with its roots in WW2 code-breaking. Their main focus? Signals intelligence, or SIGINT. Basically, they monitor, intercept, and share vast amounts of global communications, electronic signals, and cyber intelligence. Because it operates largely in the shadows, the Five Eyes naturally sparks intense debate when it comes to governance and policy. Take this quote from Edward Snowden, who famously leaked details of their mass surveillance capabilities. He described the alliance as a supranational intelligence organization that does not answer to the known laws of its own countries. We're presenting this impartially because it perfectly captures the core tension here. The Five Eyes is incredibly effective precisely because of its secrecy, but that exact same secrecy raises massive questions about democratic oversight, civil liberties, and privacy. Section 4. The US and UK overlap.
All right, so we've looked at the public UN and the secretive Five Eyes. But what happens when we put them together? Here is where ultimate geopolitical power is truly concentrated. Think about it. China, Russia, and France have the UN veto, but they aren't in the Five Eyes. Australia, Canada, and New Zealand have the incredible intelligence network of the Five Eyes, but no UN veto. Only two nations sit at the head of both the public and the secret tables, the United States and the United Kingdom.
The strategic consequence of this overlap is just immense. It allows policy to be shaped from the shadows directly to the chamber. Intelligence shared within the encrypted networks of the Five Eyes directly shapes how the US and UK understand global threats, stuff like cyber attacks, foreign interference, or troop movements. That secret intelligence then dictates their foreign policy, their joint advisories, and ultimately how they wield their immense public power and vetoes in the UN Security Council. Basically, the secret network directs the public lever. Section 5. The Rise of Minilateralism. As the world becomes more complex and great power rivalry starts to paralyze massive multilateral institutions like the UN, countries are actively changing their strategies. And this brings us to minilateralism. The concept is pretty simple, actually. Bringing together the smallest possible number of states to devise the largest possible impact on issue-specific matters. The Five Eyes is actually a classic early example of this. Frustration with clunky, veto-prone, top-down multilateral systems has led states to favor this smarter, more targeted, and way more flexible alternative. I mean, why try to get 190 countries to agree when you can get 3 or 4 high-trust allies to actually take action, right? We're seeing this shifting strategy constantly today. For example, a 2022 academic analysis out of Flinders University, looking at the Indo-Pacific, notes that as power shifts, massive multilateral systems are just proving ineffective. So the US is pivoting. They're working closely with their Five Eyes partners and other key allies to form incredibly specific, targeted minilateral groups to counter regional threats and share the security burden. In practice today, this looks like the Quad, bringing together the US, Australia, India, and Japan, or the AUKUS defense partnership between Australia, the UK, and the US. Notice the pattern? These are heavily populated by Five Eyes members. They're essentially cross-bracing their alliances. By leaning into these smaller, minilateral defense and intelligence partnerships, the US and its closest allies are actively bypassing the gridlock of the UN Security Council entirely, managing global security on their own terms. Which leaves us with a pretty profound question to chew on. As great power rivalries deepen, will the future of global security be decided in the public chambers of the UN or the encrypted networks of the Five Eyes? The balance between transparent multilateral governance and secret minilateral intelligence is shifting rapidly, right before our eyes. I really hope this explainer has given you a powerful new lens through which to view international relations. Thanks so much for hanging out with me. Stay curious and keep learning.